And with you introducing yourself and a little bit about yourself and what you do, because you do a lot of things.
Yes, I do. I'm the author of the Battleground series, and it's a near future UK based dystopia. And when I sat down to write my first novel, I honestly thought it would be spaceships and planets and aliens because I have a master's degree in science fiction studies. So I thought that's where it would go. That's what I've been reading all my life. That's what I thought would happen. But I'm also really interested in politics and people and why they do what they do. So what ended up coming out of the keyboard was a UK based dystopia. So it was a surprise to me. But I've absolutely loved writing it. Absolutely loved telling the story. But yeah, I mean, I've done a whole lot of other things. I've been a magazine editor. I've edited educational materials. I've taught adults IT skills. I've renovated houses. So I've had one of those standard writer careers where you don't know what you want to do and you keep trying new things, and then you sit down to write a book and you're hooked. That's
Yeah.
that's how it goes. But yeah, at the moment I'm helping to promote other authors. So I live in Bury St Edmunds, and I didn't know when I first put my Instagram account up when I was just about to publish the first book in the series. Suddenly, I was making these connections, and all these people lived within about 5 miles of me. And there are some amazing authors, some absolutely amazing creative people. And so I've kind of got into the place where I've organized a local author shelf. We've got an amazing arts venue in the center of town. And I've been working with the owner, and we've put up a shelf of local authors. I've got 19 local authors, 30 something books on the shelf. And so if you go into the Market Cross in the center of Bury St Edmunds, and it's a cafe gallery space, you grab a coffee, you grab a piece of cake, and then you can sit down and read any of our books. And then if you like them, there are links in the front to go and buy your own copy. And it's just, we're all trying to cross promote each other. Um, we do makers markets, we do sci-fi conventions, you know, we go and we go together and we all make sure that we cross promote each other's books. So yeah, I'm doing that as well.
That sounds amazing. How is it having that kind of community of writers? Is that quite like a nice, I imagine that similar to like I do design work and I find that that can be quite an insular
Yeah.
thing. It's something you do alone most of the time. So how is it having those kind of connections and friends who kind of get it and you can
Yeah,
talk to
yes.
about it and
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, to be honest. And we meet up every 2 weeks. So before COVID, we were meeting up for coffee, and we were going to the Waterstones Cafe and we were chatting away. And then COVID hit and lockdown hit. And I realized that, you know, we all needed this. We all still needed to be talking to other authors. And some of us found lockdown, you know, we couldn't write. It was too stressful. Others, I wrote 2 books during lockdown. Other people were doing that, and so we carry on and we meet via Zoom. And it's absolutely amazing because every 2 weeks you're guaranteed to have a group of people who are all, you know, if they're writing, they're talking about what they're writing. If they're not writing, we can all kind of encourage each other, and we talk about publishing, we talk about marketing. And it's just, yeah, it is absolutely amazing because you're absolutely right. You know, when you sit down and write, it's just you and the laptop, and that's it. And it can be incredibly lonely. So yeah, knowing there are other people out there who are going through the same thing, and we can talk each other off cliffs, you know, when you've got someone just going, oh my goodness, my book's not working, it's terrible, I'm a terrible writer, and you can sit there and go, yeah, but are you really though, you know?
are you really or do you just need to take like a minute and just
Yes,
put it down for a
yes.
little bit and
And
take a
think
breath?
about your readers, and you know,
Yeah.
you've got all these people who love your books, and you know, it's going to be fine.
Yeah, like definitely. Like I imagine that that's like such an amazing and kind of support network to have when you're both writing and when you're promoting and everything. So I suppose we should talk a little bit about your series. So it is 7 books long.
So it's actually 8 books long.
It's 8 now.
It's 8. Well, there's a free prequel. So yeah, so it's a standalone spoiler-free prequel. It's called Making Trouble. And you can just download it for free. It's at freebook.tallybooks.com. Just to get my push in there. And
I'll make sure to link it in the thingy as well.
Fantastic, thank you.
Look at the surrounding areas.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's so that's actually the backstory of one of the characters in the main series. So you don't have to read it at all. It's not required. You don't have to read it first, but it just gives you a bit of an introduction to the scenario that I put together. So the main series is 8 books. So I've got bit one. Let me do my here you go. Oh no, get the light on it. There we go. So that's book 1 of the series. And so it's a near future dystopia. It's based in the UK and it's after Brexit and Scottish independence. So obviously politics have changed a bit, and the layout of things have changed a bit, but the main difference is that it's a totalitarianist, isolationist government. So the UK has lost its connections with the wider world, and there's plenty of domestic terrorism, civil unrest. People aren't very happy with the situation. So the government brings back a form of national service to try and is to get teenagers patrolling the streets. So they're not supposed to fight. They're not supposed to, do anything dramatic. They're just supposed to be a deterrent for anybody who wants to be causing civil unrest. And I mean, I grew up with the IRA putting bombs all over England. So, and there was one in the town I grew up in. So I'm kind of thinking of that and putting that again into the future and what you might do to try and stop that. So the book follows a group of teenagers as they're conscripted into this new branch of the army. It's called the Home Forces because it's patrolling the streets at home. And the main character, so the narrator, Bex, while they're training, she uncovers this government conspiracy that actually looks as if it might be dangerous for the whole country. So she then has to decide, she and her friends have to decide, where their loyalties lie, what they're willing to risk, whether they're willing to risk for to fight for what's right, whether they're willing to accept what's going on. So that's the kickoff for the series. And it's really important to me that the series has 2 strong female narrators. So they alternate telling the story between them, and they're actually on opposite sides. So you're getting, as the reader, you're getting stuff from both sides that actually they don't necessarily know about each other. So you can sort of watch the pieces fall into place, whereas the narrators don't necessarily know that. And the other thing that's really important is that I didn't want it to be romance based. If you're trying to save your country, the last thing you want is a sort of confusing love triangle going on at the same time. Save that for afterwards. Save that for when you're done. I wanted it to be die for each other friendships, and I don't say that lightly. I wanted my characters to be and to have the kind of friendships and friends who have your back when it's really dangerous, when it actually comes down to it, when it actually, you're risking your life. You want somebody behind you who's going to back you up. So that was a really important element of it, and I'm extremely proud that the book 1 has won 2 international book awards. So that's a kind of that's when I'm feeling down, that's my kind of go-to, and have a look at my awards.
Definitely, because it sounds like such a compelling and kind of like incredibly well thought out narrative that could happen. It's one of those, and I think that's what I love about dystopian books in general. Like, it's that little like you can foresee it's that whole different routes laid in front of you, many possible roads, and
yes,
I love
definitely.
it. So was there anything in particular that you think kind of led you down the more dystopian route, or was it just that you sat down and that's kind of like what poured out at the time?
It's partly that's what came out. As I say, it's not what I was expecting, but actually thinking about it, I absolutely love dystopia. I absolutely love the Hunger Games, Divergent, the Australia trilogy, Uglies, this Mortal Coil, all of those, Maze Runner. just really, really enjoyed them. And also the sort of the adult end, so 1984, Brave New World, and V for Vendetta, actually, which is UK based, which turns out to have been really influential on the Battleground series, just because that's what was in my head. And so it all, you don't notice it at the time, but when you read it back, you're sort of like, oh, okay, yeah, I know where that came from. So I'm fascinated by politics, and I'm fascinated by what makes people vote against their own instincts or against their own interests. So I looked at the Patriot Act in the US after 9/11, and there were people voting to lose their rights because it made them feel safer. And I don't think they were safer, but they were voting to give the government more power and to give themselves less power. And so I'm really intrigued as to, what makes people do that. And of course, that's kind of your slippery slope to a dystopia, is people voting for things that don't fully make sense. But I'm also really fascinated by people who genuinely do live in a dystopian society, but they're brave enough to stand up and brave enough to protest. And so, I mean, the protests in Iran at the moment, just, oh my goodness, the bravery of those girls and women, and taking off their headscarves and, protesting and genuinely risking their lives to try and change their country. And I just find that incredible, because it's so easy to sort of sit there and go, oh, if I just keep my head down, if I don't antagonize anybody, maybe it'll be okay for me. And the person who steps forward and takes off their headscarf or makes the big protest first, and then other people join in, what's that trigger? What makes people change their minds and actually make it worthwhile to take those risks? So I think all of that is incredibly fascinating. So yeah, so just what it means to be involved, for the people who are involved and the people who do involve themselves in the protest, what it means for them, what that means for their future, what it means for what they have to live with. I just think that's really, really interesting.
Definitely. Like it, I definitely think it takes a particular kind of strength to be able to step up,
Yes.
especially those first few steps, which can be the scariest. Being the first one to step forward I can only imagine, is just terrifying and takes so much like inner strength that
Yes.
I always like to imagine I would have in situations like that. But the chances are that I might not be, that probably wouldn't be the first person to step forward. So, and I definitely think that's what draws me into kind of those narratives, trying to figure out, it's human nature, isn't it? It's that
Yeah,
kind of like, what is that line for people?
absolutely. And what would you do in that situation? And that's kind of what I'm saying to my readers is, if this is what you woke up to tomorrow, which obviously never happens, it obviously is a slow slow descent, but if this is what you woke up to tomorrow, what would you be willing to do about it? And it's kind of challenging people and saying, okay, well, if you could make a tiny little bit of difference, would you do it, or would you sit back and go, oh no, it's someone else's problem? And I've been on so many protest marches and seen all these people, and and we weren't in danger. I've never done anything where it got out of hand and you end up actually facing a line of police or anything like that, but I've been on very big protest marches, and you look around at the people around you and you're just like, we're all here for the same thing, but we've probably got different reasons for being here, and we've probably all got different lines that we would draw. If the police did suddenly appear and start firing tear gas, who would stay, who would go? I don't think until you're there. I don't think until it's that moment happens and you find out.
Yeah. With most dystopians, most that I've read anyway, they happen in like quite a distant future, but obviously your series is quite close to where we are.
Yeah.
What was it you think that made you kind of look into the near future rather than like the extreme we can kind of pretend it's very far away.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to read dystopias that are either based, because quite a lot of them are based in the US or a failed version of the US, or
Yeah.
places that don't exist, or as you say, a very distant future. And I think it's really easy to disengage when you read stuff like that you can read it and go, oh yes, this is great, lots of brave people. But actually, I wanted to bring it home a bit. And I wanted to say, this could actually happen here. We're all so good at going, it won't happen here, it's fine. And it could happen anywhere. Look at the way right-wing politicians are coming into power all around the world. It could happen anywhere. And it's actually our responsibility in a democracy, however functional or non-functional that democracy is. It's our responsibility to keep it on track. So yes, I wanted to tell a story, and yes, I wanted to make it interesting and exciting, but I also want to say, look, actually, this is up to us. We do have a responsibility, and we do need to make sure this doesn't happen. And if it does happen, somebody needs to stand up, somebody needs to fight back, because you don't want to stay in that forever. That's, my scenario is not great. It's not good at all. But the reason that I set it in the UK, and I set it so soon, there are no dates, there are no actual dates in the books, because I didn't want stuff to overtake me, but it's fairly clear that it's not too far in the future. And it was actually watching the Brexit debates that gave me the inspiration, because it doesn't matter what your politics are, looking at those debates, it was two sides talking at each other, and there wasn't any communication and there wasn't any listening. It was just shouting and noise. And I thought, well, if that's happening, in 2016, what happens if that divide continues and we just end up in a divided country? So that was my starting point. And I just trying to come up with a worst case scenario. Brexit, it leads to Scottish independence, it leads at, which I'm not stating an opinion on, by the way. This is a dramatic outcome. It's you get your civil unrest, you get your domestic terrorism, and just trying to sort of say that this could happen, and just watch out for it, because we're already being divided, we're already being played by global players trying to make Brexit happen. What happens when that happens? What happens next? So in my scenario, as well as sort of the worst case, it being isolationist, not having anything to do with other countries, or at least very little, coming in and out is difficult. We're very sort of anti-immigration, all of that sort of thing. The government also switches off the civilian mobile phone network and civilian internet, so that resistance groups can't be planning in the background, so they can bug all the landlines. There's no internet access. It's really hard to get a national movement going at that point. So the government's sort of keeping a handle on everything. And the scariest part is that just after I published book one, France talked about bringing back national service. They're seriously considering it. And South Sudan, they had a load of protests, and the government response was to switch off the mobile phone network and shut down the internet. And I thought those were impossible things. I thought those were ridiculous things from my scenario, and they literally happened within months. So this is the kind of thing I'm trying to put across, that just because it happened in South Sudan doesn't mean it won't happen here. Just because it's France talking about national service doesn't mean it won't happen here. So it's been very, and of course there's also been a huge uptick in support for Scottish independence as well post Brexit. So all the things that I sort of put in and cooked together, going, I'm going to make this really bad. An alarming number of them are coming true.
Yeah.
So it's supposed to be a warning. It's not supposed to be a textbook.
I could just imagine you sat there like, no, stop it. I didn't mean do it.
I literally do that. News reports come on and I'm literally going, what are you doing? No, back up. It's really, really
This
scary.
was my worst case scenario, everyone. Come on.
Stop. I do actually have a protest banner that I took to one of the Brexit marches that does say, when I wrote a post-Brexit dystopia, I didn't expect it to come true. Because it's just, it is absolutely terrifying.
Oh, I can't imagine. Like, I find watching the news stressful enough, but I'm assuming that adds like another layer to the stress.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Watching stuff coming true and just going, oh, come on, I've literally been here, imagined it, and I really didn't think you'd do it, guys. I really, really
Yeah.
had more faith than that. So yes.
Definitely. Like, oh, I can't imagine. I'd like, no, I can't imagine. I literally can't. Like, it would terrify me to turn on the news. I mean, it terrifies me anyway, but we must do these things. So obviously dystopians are one of probably the most loved kind of genres within YA. What do you think it is about it that kind of draws such a kind of
It's a really interesting
interest to
question,
it?
isn't it? Because it should be depressing. It
Yeah.
should be this, genre that brings you down. And the way I explain it is that it's not about the setting. The setting is just the background. It's just the trigger. It's the context. And what it's actually about is the characters. And it's about putting those characters into that worst case scenario and just seeing the bravery and seeing what motivates them to do the right thing. And it's about kind of living through it with that character. And it is that fantasy that you were talking about, that you'd be the first person to stand up. That's what you get with reading dystopia. It's not kind of, oh no, how bad is it going to get? It's how good are people going to get in order to bring about the end of the bad. So it's about Katniss, it's about Triss, it's about Tally from Uglies, it's about Katerina from This Mortal Coil. It's about those characters and what they do and the terrible, terrible decisions they have to make. And sometimes they get it wrong, and sometimes they do everything right and it doesn't work. And it's kind of it's that amped up version of life, I guess. But it's just that it's about inspiring characters and just what you could do if you were brave enough. What could you do?
Yeah. Because I think it's always that little bit of hope
Yes.
as well that you can't not find hope in a dystopian. It's like it's already terrible.
Yes. Yes.
Everything is terrible. It's bad.
Yeah.
But I think it's the kind of, I don't want to say joy, but it is. It's the joy of like reading about characters in that situation. I want to point out that I don't want any character, person, or anything to be in that situation. But there is that like, there's that little thing that kind of lights up your soul, I think, a little bit, seeing people in that situation kind of not give up,
Yes.
fight.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's that, like, it's like the hope of something worth fighting for kind of scenario. And I think that's like there's just something about that spark, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're right. Hope is actually the word. That's exactly what it's about. And hope in the darkest times. So you can read it and then you can come away and look at your own life and go, do you know what? My life isn't that bad, actually. No one's threatening to kill me. I've got a roof over my head. I don't have to run away. So all those little things that are bugging me, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Comparison.
that for me is the same with fantasy as well. Like, as much as I love to give myself main character energy, I am not a main character at all. You put me in a fantasy world, I would probably die within 2 minutes due
Yes.
to tripping over a rock and falling on a sword that had just been left on the ground. It wouldn't even be like, it wouldn't be epic in any way. It would be one of those embarrassing like footnotes at the end of the page.
Yes.
An orange blob appeared and instantly disappeared again. But
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And it's that kind of, yeah, I don't think I'd survive in the scenario that I created, but I'm quite happy to put a load of school kids into it and see, how they survive.
what happened?
yeah, that's, you know, that's great. That's a what's the word I'm looking for? You know, it's an intellectual adventure.
Yeah.
But you've got all the emotion behind it as well. And yeah, no, there's definitely that kind of, okay, I know I wouldn't survive. I know I wouldn't get out of this. But what if I have some characters that do?
Yeah.
And that's where you go. That's where you go for the hope, and that's where you go for the bravery. And yeah, that, no, I think that's exactly it.
Mm. I suppose I'm gonna have to ask you, we often have quite a lot of young budding writers watching. So do you have any kind of writing tips or just general life tips, I guess, that you
Yeah, writing
that
tips. Yeah. Yeah.
you have loved to have known when you were younger?
Yeah, it took me a really long time to sit down and write that first novel, and I've written short stories forever. I mean, you know, before I can remember, I was writing short stories, but I've never really done anything with them, other than Wattpad for a while. Uh, it's and that leap from short stories to a novel, it feels really big, and you don't, sorry, I'm sounding terrible, you don't have to make that leap at all. Short stories are short stories, they're amazing, but it's that kind of wondering whether you can do a longer form. And I say it took me a very, very long time to get there, but what I learned is write the book that you want to read. So don't sit there, do that kind of analyze the market, see what people want, you know, what's the next big thing? Is it mermaids? Is it aliens? Whatever, and write that, because your heart won't be in it. And while you're writing, don't think about how you're going to sell the book. Don't think about agents or publishers, or if you go the self-publishing route, don't think about any of that. Think about, if this was a book that you picked up in the library or the bookshop, how would you want it to go? And how would you want that story to be told? And so for me, that's the it's not romance based, it's friendship based, it's the hope, it's the bravery, but it's also getting to know my characters. And my goodness, the series was supposed to be 2 books long. The first book was the setup, and the second book was going to be the finish. And then my characters had other ideas, and so they kind of showed up, and I sat there writing up the instant report. They were having conversations in my head that I was like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. All right, then, that's
Okay,
fine.
let me take notes.
Yes. Exactly. It's like, you do what you're doing, I'm just going to write it down, that's fine. So, you know, and that will happen, and it doesn't matter whether you're a planner. There are people who plan everything out, you know, and they have post-it notes, and they just have to sit down and write it all up. That doesn't work for me, because if I try and do that, my characters will go off in a whole other direction. It's about emotion, it's about being engaged, and if you try and kind of write something really coldly, and you're trying to sort of meet the requirements of a particular genre or whatever, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you're doing this for the first time, write that book that you've never been able to find, that you want, tell the story that you want to read, and that will reach other people. And it might be hard to find that audience because you haven't written it to, you know, what a sci-fi audience wants or what a romance audience wants, but you will find that audience because it meant something to you. And if you can write it with that emotion, and you can write it with all of your heart, you will find readers. It's just it's really scary. It is really scary putting your heart down on paper, but that's where the reward is. That's where you can finish it, and you can hand it to people, and they'll read it, and you feel like you've done what you wanted to do. So even if people don't like your book, that doesn't matter. They're not the person you wrote it for. You wrote it for you, and you wrote it for anybody who does like it. If
Yeah.
people don't like it, they are by definition not your target audience. So don't worry about it. Doesn't matter. Write your book.
I think that's such an important kind of comment to make, because when you think about book readers as a whole, there are so many. Some people won't go near fantasy at all. You put like anything remotely fantastical near them, nope,
Yep.
not happening. Some people will only read romance. I can read romance, but only if it's a subplot to some kind of disaster. Um, if there's a small, and I mean a small subplot, that's okay.
Yeah.
I can't sit there and read like Bridgerton style. No.
And
There's
yet,
yeah,
you know, romance is the best-selling genre in the world. So
exactly. So like I'm not Bridgerton's audience.
yes.
And I never will be. And that's not that I think the people that write that or create those TV shows, is it? Maybe.
Mhm.
Again, not target audience, very
Yep.
clear. They are still fantastic creators and writers. And I mean, I'm not a writer, so I know for a fact they write better than me. It's just it's not my third kind of thing.
Yep.
But then I like some other books that other people who love romance don't like. So,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it's the same with I think with all creative kind of outlets. I do kind of textile design, and as you can probably tell from art, color is kind of my thing.
Yes.
There are some people that only wear shades of grey and black
Yes. Or beige.
or beige or like I mean, I'm pretty much just orange. But you know, some people just like color and pattern isn't for them. Whereas for me, I created my fabrics for me
Yep.
because if I always say that if you exist, you obviously exist, your taste exists, like someone's going to share them.
Yes. Absolutely that. Yeah.
And you will find them or they will find you.
Yes.
And it all works out and you get to do what you most enjoy and the people that find you are gonna adore your writing or your insanely colored fabric.
Yep.
They're gonna adore it all the more because it is for them, for you, and
Yeah,
yeah,
there's passion behind it. There's feeling behind it. There's a human connection behind it that I think people do sense. And if as you say, if you know, color is their thing, that will resonate with them and they'll recognize it. You know, nothing against being completely sleek and black and gray and everything else, but you know, that's another thing. It's another style, and somebody else will design for that, and they will connect, and that's great. But it is, I mean, it's you know, fundamentally, it's all about connect. Gosh, I'm getting really philosophical about art, but it is
it's
about connection.
it is, and it's it because it makes me laugh because I always love having this conversation when one of my best friends is with me because she is the definition of sleek, like head to toe, witchy vibes.
Oh
And
yes.
then there's like me next to her, like I'm an orange.
Yes.
So it's like it's literally having two completely different target markets next to each other, and it's a great way to kind of visualize it. Which you there may be some common intersections because obviously we're friends, so there's got to be things in common, but
Yep,
on the
not
surface,
that one.
no.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. And this is the thing about finding your audience, is that there are all those people out there, and there's a you know, there's an unimaginable number of books out there, but there's also an unimaginable number of readers. And it's just it's finding each other and it's connecting. And the other point is that reading books, somebody did some research, and I'm afraid I don't have the reference here, which makes my tiny academic heart rather sad, but somebody looked into it, and they interviewed readers about what they liked about their favorite books, or what made them come back to read the rest of a series, or to read stuff by the same author. And what people were saying was, oh, I really liked the setting, I liked the time period, I liked whatever. But they did a bit more research, and they were like, yeah, you think that's what you liked, but actually they asked them how they felt. And they said, okay, you've just finished a book by your favorite author, how did it make you feel? And it was all about feelings. It was all the trigger for people to read the next book, or to find something by that same author, or to find something in the same genre, was how that book had made them feel. And so it's not about, you know, the exact shape of the spaceship, or the exact romantic setting, or whatever it is. it's about how you felt when you put the book down at the end. And it's kind of wonderful, but it's also very frustrating, because it means that there isn't a template for writing the perfect book. The perfect book doesn't exist. It will only exist for individual people. But it just means that if you can capture the heart of your audience, you're on a winner. You just got to figure out how to do that. That's the hard part.
Also, I feel like that is such an amazing experiment, but probably says a lot about me based on my shells.
Yeah. Yeah, it does suddenly make you kind of go, oh wait, hold on, what do I read?
So apparently I have a hero complex.
Yep.
I just want to be a hero. I possess none of the skills required.
But that's what books are for. I mean,
But I want to feel like I could be.
exactly.
Make me feel like I could be a hero, and I will read your next book.
Yes. No, I love it. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And it's actually as vague as that, isn't it? That it doesn't matter in what way the writer makes you feel like a hero. It's just that's the feeling you got from it. It's I think it's absolutely
That is so
essential.
interesting and mildly terrifying.
Yes. Well, this is my home library that I have been collecting for decades. I'm not even gonna think about how long. But to me, this isn't just a shelf of books. Every one of these books is a portal to another dimension, or another setting, or another story, or another feeling. So you can come in, and you know what it's like. Everybody's got their favorite book that they go back to. And if I'm feeling down, I will come in here and I will find the book that suits my mood, and I will sit down and read that. Or if something amazing's happened and I want to feel upbeat, I kind of know which books to go to, because actually each one is a doorway into a feeling. And when you start looking at it like that, and when you start thinking about writing like that, I think it frees up a lot of stuff. I think it lets you express yourself, rather than trying to sort of I must write this particular book and it must go in that particular direction. I think it frees you up.
That's really interesting as well, because I'm one of those people that is very much a mood reader. I've never understood how people can kind of sit there, put their books in order, and say, I'm going to read them in this order to get through them, and then X, Y, and Z. So that is actually really interesting, because it's like mood reading is very maybe an apt name for what I am doing.
Yeah. And I think more people do that than realize that they do it. And I'm terrible. I am that person that piles up the books. Oh my goodness. I mean, the books you see behind me, I've got piles on the floor that I haven't even put on the shelves yet. And I've got the fantasy. So this is sci-fi behind me. The fantasy section has books on top. It's just, I'm running out of bookshelves. I need more. It's never too many books, always not enough bookshelves. So
that's where me and my partner disagree. He's not a reader. We're the classic trope of reader and gamer.
Yes. Yeah.
I didn't realize this until we started dating, that you don't really buy discs for your consoles anymore.
Oh, it's downloaded, isn't it?
Download them.
Yeah.
Which is
you don't have that satisfying shelf anymore.
But it's really inconvenient for me, because I'm like, I need more space. It's like, well, I don't take up any, so like
perfect.
Which is good for me in some ways, but then it's bad, because when you're like, oh, could we get another bookshelf? Well, why do you want another one? Because I don't have shelves.
Yeah, yes. And it's lovely. Kindles are amazing, but they don't replace this. It's not the same.
It's one, I like to kind of peruse them, and two, I think it got likened to kind of being a serial killer. In that I like trophies.
Yes.
I like to put them on the shelf when I've read them.
Yep.
Alexa's talking now.
Oh
no. But yeah, like I like putting them on the shelf like a trophy.
Yes.
when I've read them.
I have been known to read something on Kindle and then have to go and buy it so that I can put it on the shelf for exactly that reason.
Yeah, I really struggle with reading on Kindles anyway, just because of my eyes and everything. But I'm so bad at that. Even if I get like a proof, if I enjoy the proof,
Oh
you'll
yeah.
know because I'll have the finished copy. Which my partner totally doesn't understand because he's like, but you've got the book.
Yeah, but no, that's not the point.
But one, it's not the point. Two, I'm being really supportive because I enjoyed
Yes,
it. So I have to financially support
absolutely.
that. Three, it's not the same. And if it's a really, really good book, I will keep the book and the final copy.
Yes, I'm exactly the same. I'm exactly the same. And the other one is series, whether they're in hardback or paperback.
Oh no, you can't mix. I can't.
No, no, I am going to have to rebuy The Cruel Prince because it's the only one of the Folk of the Air series that I currently have in paperback. All the rest I bought straight at hardback. And my brain's going, that's really stupid. Why are you doing that? And I'm just like, no, it's going to have to happen.
So the last question I have for you is one of my favorite questions to ask people, and probably the hardest because I always think asking the book recommendations can be really hard because sometimes when people ask me for them, my brain forgets I've ever read a book.
Oh, everything falls out, doesn't it? Just I don't. What is a book? I don't know. Yes.
I'm like, I recommend this book. They're like, what is it about? I'm like,
And the question should be, how did it make you feel? There you go.
See, I could tell you that. I could tell you vibes. If you want vibes, I can help you. But otherwise, I'm going to struggle. So is there any kind of UK YA books that you've really loved recently, or any
Yeah.
favorites?
Yeah, so it's going to sound really bizarre because I've been saying that I'm not a romance reader, and I've been saying that my books, are friendship based rather than romance based. But the book that the year I read it, I literally bought it for almost everybody I knew for Christmas. So much so that I messed up the Waterstones reordering algorithm in my local branch. And when I went back, I bought about 13 copies. I bought everything off the table. And when I went back in, they'd restocked it with even more. I felt really bad because I knew it was me that had bought them all. But it's A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood.
Ooh, I've not read that one yet. It's been on my list for so long.
Yeah. And it was what you were saying about book clubs, that I was part of a YA book club, and the organizer chose that book, and I was like, oh, romance, okay, fine, we're going to read some romances. And I absolutely fell in love with it, absolutely adored it. She's just got, I don't know what it is. It's really magical setting, some great strong female characters, so I like the second one as well. So really, was it Snowfall of Silver? Really enjoyed that as well. And it's these strong female characters, and yes, it's a romance, but that's not what the character is necessarily looking for. The first book is about a girl in the, I want to say, the 20s, and she wants to be independent, she wants to be a journalist, so that's what she's trying to make happen in her life. And just so you don't feel that she's just there to find a man. She's got so much more that she's going to do. That's not the end of the story, that's not the point of the story. But she also, there's some really strong social commentary, but because it's character based, you don't feel like it's a lecture. It's just kind of, you get involved with the characters and you start to think, oh gosh, that's an issue, or that was an issue then. Is it still an issue now? Maybe. Oh, I should think about that. Which is, it's wonderful if you can get that in and get people thinking as well. And the other thing she does is she writes these incredibly magical parties, and I don't know what it is, I'm a sucker for this completely. Kind of just yeah, magical is the only word. And she makes you feel as if you're right there. You can feel it, you can see the stars in the garden, you can wander under the trees, you can see the people, you can taste the champagne. It's absolutely beautiful. So I completely fell in love, and I didn't expect to at all. So yes, I recommend that to absolutely everybody.
Well then, this is my final sign that I definitely do have to pick it up.
I was going to say, yeah. full-on recommendation. But the dystopian one is The Stranded by Sarah Daniels, that's only just come out this summer, and proper YA dystopia, absolutely brilliant.
That book's genius.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Sometimes you read things and you just like, there's so many things that I can say about that book, but I actually can't, because all I can really say is that it's incredible. It's one of those like Sarah might as well have just come and like hit me in the face with it, like, you know what I mean? I know that sounds really bizarre, but like,
no, it's got everything. I mean, it's got the politics, it's got the characters, it's got some sort of romance and friendships and stuff going on, but it's just, the scenario is so good and the baddie is so good, so bad, and the stakes are so high, and it's just the idea of being on a cruise ship that's been stuck in the Atlantic for generations. That was the moment where I just went, yes, I'm reading this book. This is absolutely fabulous. And it lived up to it. And I can't wait for the second one. Oh my goodness.
Me neither. I'm like, Sarah, do you have any updates? I can't tell you anything. I will let you get off and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
I've had a blast. Do you want to, before we go, let everyone know where they can find you online and your books and that kind of thing, and I'll make sure that I also add all that information in the kind of text box as well.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Yes, so I have a website. It is tallrbooks.com. I have a free book that you can download, which is the spoiler-free standalone prequel to the series, and that's at freebook.tallrbooks.com. And I will double check that link is working. It's just a final thing to make sure. But you can buy the books all the usual places. You can buy them in Waterstones. You can buy them, if you're in the US, you can buy them in Barnes and Noble. You can buy them in from Amazon, local bookshops, and they're in some libraries as well. So and I absolutely support your local libraries. I always forget to mention this, and I know that I absolutely want to, make sure that people are supporting their local libraries, and you can always go to your local library and request that they buy the book for you, and then other people can read it as well. So yeah, tallrbooks.com.
Amazing. Right, well, I will leave you to the rest of this very rainy day.
Yes.
Very rainy.
I mean, I'm quite happy to be kind of indoors and not running across town this morning. Yeah, it's lovely.
Keeping inside with my sneaky blankets that
nice. Is that Stitch?
Yes.
Oh, yes.